just the word identity, what comes to mind? Because we all know that the basic idea of identity is who we are as people. It's a form of your culture, your areas of interest, your upbringing. But what if I were to ask you, what is your identity? You may not have a straight line answer. The good news is, you're not supposed to. In the constantly changing world we live in today, finding your identity is something expected, something we're supposed to have figured out at a certain time. We've been asked multiple times what makes us unique from the crowd, whether that's on a college application or on a resume for a job. We are constantly trying to prove ourselves for a certain point we want to have. It's in a way comparative to walking into a bookstore. You have all these different genres written by famous authors, others newly published, and then they're all put on these display shelves. You can pick one up and read the summary of the back to get an understanding of what it's about. But you can't go through all the emotions and excitement without reading the story page by page. Just like books, we each have our own story to tell, and it's up to us to develop the characteristics and plot of our narrative. Take away the competition of the other bestsellers in the picture and ask yourself who you are when you have the power to do whatever you want. More importantly, how do you get yourself to discover who you are when no one is watching? I grew up in a suburb close to Chicago for the majority of my life. When I finished middle school, we moved to my mother's hometown in North Carolina. I'm sure you can guess the major cultural shock I experienced, especially at that point in my life. I was so upset with my parents for making me move away from my stable friend group. Back home, I was never a kid that was too shy to stand away from the crowd. In sixth grade, I used to wear different colored Converses to experiment with my style. And in eighth grade, I was the MC for our school talent show. But in all those instances, I had my friends and classmates who knew me and loved me. Who would I be without them there cheering me on? Looking back on it, it wasn't leaving my friends and family that scared me, but it was the fact I would now be forced to find my own identity without the immediate praise from the people I knew. When I moved to North Carolina, I lost a bit of confidence within myself. I sat back in the back of the classes and avoided bringing any attention to myself. I realized I'd become very stuck in the ways and never went out to try new things. One day, I stayed after school to talk to my music teacher, but nobody was in the room except for a chair and a piano. I sat down and began to play whatever melodies I had previously learned from that week. It felt so good, effortlessly pressing the keys with my fingertips in that moment, a moment I had control over and I gave life to. What made it even more special was that this was the first time that I was playing piano in a room all by myself. I realized it wasn't when I was surrounded by my peers or when I was with my friends that gave a sense to my identity, but rather when I was alone and discovering what made me lose track of time when nobody was there but me. When it comes to relationships, it's important to understand the background of how we as humans perceive others and react. Research from Sue Estroff and her social medicine colleagues at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill tell us it's natural human inclination to make sense of things, draw connections, and to look for relationships. That's just how we think. Part of the process is essentially sorting people and places into categories that we either have and our cultures have created. But just like these different categories we put ourselves into, we all hold different personalities depending on the people we're around. Think about a professor or teacher you once had. Now think of your best friend. Would you act the same around each person? Obviously not. Hopefully not. Even going beyond in-person meetings, we now live in an age where you're a different person even based on the social media app you use. Because I know I'm definitely not the same person in Instagram captions as I am in LinkedIn. Without even realizing it, you're subconsciously holding on to all these hats and switching between different personas. Why is this important? Because it makes finding yourself a whole lot more difficult. So now that we've shed light onto the fact that we're more complicated than a single wired personality, how do we organize these different versions of ourselves into one identity? There's a saying that people use these days. Everyone's always talking about being the main character. They say to be the main character of our own story, your life it should be the one that's revolving around your life. And because that is the main focus of the story. Well, everybody should be the main character of their own life. Don't forget that you are the author as well. You get to decide what happens to the main character. It's up to you to write your own story. And the best part is you don't have any obligation to run the script by anyone. You get to be whoever you want in this world, but you also have the responsibility to get you to that version. You can't start the next chapter of your life by going back and rereading the old one over and over again. The secret ingredient to all this is that you will never stop your search for authenticity and definition unless it's connected to none other than yourself. So, finding what channels that happiness in you, taking what inspired you and made you feel good, and changing it into your life is the first step to understanding who you are. It's in a sense, sorry, it could be either a meditative walk on the beach or painting while listening to music or playing video games in your room. Whatever that is, when you put your consciousness into realizing what that happiness is, then you will start actively noticing the little parts of what make you you. I displayed two pictures from my childhood and then one from quarantine lockdown. Throughout those years, from Illinois to North Carolina, I've used painting as a way to release stress and let my creative thoughts flow. When we busy ourselves with the everyday life routine of hustle and constantly trying to get the next stages of our lives, we sometimes miss out on the whole journey aspect of what we're doing to get there. It's so important to carve out time into the day for yourself. When you schedule time for yourself, just like you would schedule time for studying or going to work in your day, then you will start to see not only improvement in your overall self, but also being content with the personality and life you hold. Now, one of my favorite rappers I've been following for many years is none other than Kanye West. Now, although Kanye can be very controversial at times, there's one main thing I look up to him for, and it's this quote and his unwavering confidence of his identity. He tweeted on Twitter back in 2013, "Worry about your character, not your reputation. Your character is who you are as a person, and your reputation is who people think you are. When focusing on finding your identity, make sure to stay on the path that keeps you feeling alive and engaged rather than one that makes you think you look happier and engaged." And the best part about all this is that there's no time limit. You have your whole life to figure out what fills your soul with happiness. And the beauty of it is that taking the time that you're given to find it. So stay a while, sift through the pages of your book, look back on your favorite chapters, and pick up the pen and start writing. Thank you.